Donald Trump wants us to believe that he is inevitable, that we should capitulate in advance and just give up because he will always win. But that is not the case. Our protests, our pushback, our boycotts of ABC have shown that Donald Trump is weak. He is weak not only because he is losing in court every day, but in the court of public opinion. And he is about to take his biggest loss yet in the form of a government shutdown. And that very fact has Donald Trump so panicked that he just had to abruptly cancel an event, a very important meeting, and is now quite literally hiding away. We are going to get into all of it and why Donald Trump is so scared, plus a very special and important interview. But before we do, I want to hear from Senator Chris Murphy, who broke down the stakes of this upcoming government shutdown and why Democrats need to take this as a moment to fight.
So Congress has to pass the annual budget this month, or there's going to be a shutdown at the end of September. Here's the two most important things that we all need to be paying attention to, that Democrats need to be fighting for at the negotiating table. First, there's going to be a healthcare meltdown in this country later this year. All of the cuts that Republicans made earlier this year to Medicaid and to the Affordable Care Act, you're going to start seeing massive premium increases, people losing healthcare all across the country this fall. If you're on an affordable health care plan, if you bought your health care off of your state-based or national health care exchange, you could be seeing a 75% increase in your premiums later this year. And so as we debate and negotiate the budget for the coming year, we've got to stave off what will be an absolute disaster for millions of Americans. The second important thing is that this budget is not going to be worth the paper it's written on if Donald Trump continues to act illegally. What Donald Trump is basically saying is that he's not going to pay attention to anything that we write in this budget. He'll spend the money he wants to spend, and he won't spend the money that he doesn't want to spend. Now, the Constitution doesn't allow the president to do that, but Donald Trump continually is telling Congress that he is only going to implement the parts of the budget that align with his personal, political, and financial interests. We can't allow that to stand. That's not how a democracy works. We are not living in a democracy if the President of the United States ignores the budget that Congress writes. And so we have to have provisions in this budget that we're going to pass later this year that require Donald Trump to obey the law and to actually spend the money on the programs that Congress authorizes. So the healthcare system is about to go into a downward spiral. We've got to fix that this month. And we got to make sure that Donald Trump isn't allowed to continue to act in a brazen, illegal way, ignoring the laws that Congress writes. This is a big month for the rule of law. It's a big month for our democracy. It's a big month for working families out there who might be on the verge of seeing an enormous increase in healthcare costs.
This is an opportunity to stand up. This is not a strongly worded letter. This is not Chuck Schumer capitulating. This is our moment to fight back against Donald Trump. He has used and abused this government every day, hour, and second that he has been in power. And Mike Johnson and John Thune, who were supposed to be the leaders of their respective bodies, they've just been Trump's little bitches. They have completely caved to him. They've abdicated their power. Donald Trump has taken more and more as he expands his authoritarian project. And while Congress, the MAGA majority, has failed to lower your costs, Donald Trump, who promised that they would be going down, is raising them with illegal tariffs that are a tax on you. So it is time that Democrats make it clear that we are fighting back, and that is why we saw a meeting that was scheduled between Hakeem, Jeffries, and Chuck Schumer that Donald Trump agreed to right here before he made a very shocking move in a Truth Social post.
I'd love to meet with them, but I don't think it's going to have any impact.
So Trump wants the meeting. He wants to hash it out. Isn't he the deal maker in chief? Isn't that what Donald Trump always says? Well, that is not the case, because this morning, the whiny little baby president took to Truth Social with those tiny little fingers of his, and he made a special announcement about what he is canceling. We are going to get into that post in a very important interview about what comes next right after. Trump wrote on Truth Social after reviewing the details of the unserious and ridiculous demands being made by the minority radical left Democrats in return for their votes to keep our thriving country open, I have decided that no meeting with their congressional leadership could possibly be productive. They are threatening to shut down the government of the United States unless they can have over $1 trillion in new spending to continue free health care for illegal aliens, force taxpayers to fund transgender surgery for minors, have dead people on Medicaid rolls, allow illegal alien criminals to steal billions of dollars in American taxpayer benefits, try to force our country to again open our borders to criminals and to the world, allow men to play in women's sports, and essentially create transgender operations for everybody. So Donald Trump has canceled his meeting with Hakeem, Jeffries, and Chuck Schumer because he is terrified of what is coming. And that is accountability. And I spoke about exactly that and what comes next as Donald Trump panics and tries to hide away with leader Hakeem Jeffries. I hope you stick around through the entire interview because we broke some big news. Leader Jeffries, this morning we saw Donald Trump take those tiny little fingers of his to Truth Social and really try to shift the blame of what is a looming government shutdown. This guy has been telling us that he has a historic mandate, and he said it in the post, but now he wants to blame you for this meeting being canceled, I guess, in the looming shutdown. Donald Trump is clearly hiding. He's running away. If this meeting had happened, what would you want to have said to Donald Trump?
Well, this guy is running scared, and he's completely and totally out of control. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And as Democrats, our view is that we're willing to find common ground in order to pass an enlightened spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, public safety, and lowering the high cost of living. But we have been clear and will continue to be clear and would have made the point directly to Donald Trump in the Oval Office. We will not support a partisan Republican spending bill because it continues to gut the health care of the American people. And we're not in the business of hurting everyday Americans. We're in the business of helping everyday Americans. And that means protecting their health care and preventing millions of Americans from experiencing skyrocketing healthcare premiums, copays, and deductibles.
Yeah, and Trump tried to spin that when he was talking about the rural hospital funding in this post, which is only necessary because of the massive cuts to Medicaid. But clearly, there's a bit of chaos both in the House and the Senate with the Republican caucuses alike. Mike Johnson doesn't really know what he's doing. I want to talk about that just in a little bit. But what are the plans for the Democratic caucus in the House going forward? And do you think that your caucus right now is united in this fight back against Trump?
House and Senate Democrats are completely and totally unified, as was the case in the fight against Republicans when they were jamming the one big ugly bill down the throats of everyday Americans. Every single Democrat in the House and every single Democrat in the Senate was a hard no. And we were a hard no because in that fight, we found it totally unacceptable to support the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, while Republicans were ripping food out of the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans. And they did all of that in order to provide their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks. So we told them, take a hike. And in the same way, we are mounting a strong opposition against their efforts to jam this spending bill down the throats of the American people, which is why Democrats strongly opposed it in the House and the Senate, and why the Republican spending bill went down in flames on Friday. The responsible thing to do at this point was to have a meeting in the Oval Office between Donald Trump and Democratic leaders in the House and the Senate. So we demanded that meeting on Saturday. He agreed to that meeting. And then this morning, reversed course because they're running scared. And they know they can't defend the Republican healthcare crisis that they've created.
Which is why they're trying to frame this as Democrats allowing a government shutdown. Again, I find this to be a ridiculous narrative, but we see some media outlets going with it as well. These aren't just the Republican talking points. I don't know why the media is picking up on this narrative, but how do you and the rest of your caucus frame this fight as not Democrats allowing a shutdown or Democrats not living up to their responsibilities, but a failure of governance from Trump, Mike Johnson, and John Thune?
Well, Donald Trump said weeks ago that Republican legislative leaders should not even bother talking to Democrats. That's point one. Point two is that Mike Johnson canceled votes in the House of Representatives for next Tuesday and Wednesday in advance of the government possibly shutting down on October 1st when the Republican spending bill went down in flames. And so why would you cancel votes? It means you want to shut the government down. You don't even want your members in Washington, D.C. to vote on a possible resolution. Three, Donald Trump agrees to a meeting in the Oval Office to talk about avoiding a reckless Republican shutdown of the federal government, and then changes course because he knows his position and the Republican position is indefensible, which is why he's just making stuff up. And that rant this morning was unhinged, even for Donald Trump. And so we're ready, willing, and able to talk to Republicans anytime, any place, but we've drawn a clear line in the sand. We are not going to support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people in the face of the unrelenting attack to Medicaid, to Medicare, to the Affordable Care Act, to hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health clinics, which are shutting down all across America because of Donald Trump's and the Republicans' one big ugly bill. And now they've even canceled medical research, including for children with cancer. It's immoral. And that's why Democrats are going to continue to stand up for the health care of the American people.
And I want to talk in just a second a little bit about what was the overriding theme to me of Donald Trump's insane post. But you brought up wanting to speak to and debate this anytime, kind of any place, I feel like you're alluding to, as it pertains to Mike Johnson. You have called on him in the past to just get up and debate. Let's do an hour. You think that y'all are doing so great. I saw an interview when Mike Johnson was quite literally laughed at to his face for saying that if he could describe this Congress in one word, it would be productive. Do you still want to have that debate? And with the days that the sessions that Mike Johnson's kind of canceling, does that open y'all up? Do you want to debate him still?
Absolutely. And I'm so appreciative of you raising that. I challenged Mike Johnson to a debate in April of this year. I'm still waiting for a response. And I don't understand the problem. Defend your position, bro.
He's got time on his hands now.
Right. He's got time on his hands. I'll be in Washington this week. And we can meet on the House floor this week to have a debate in front of the American people about your position as it relates to shutting down the government and continuing to hurt everyday Americans and do nothing to address the high cost of living, which they promised to do on day one and failed. And we'll defend our position, which is that Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. It is their responsibility to keep the government open. If they want Democrats to work with them, then it has to be done in a way consistent with the values of the American people. We're not going to hurt the American people. We're here to help the American people. And that's our line in the sand. It's pretty simple. It's pretty reasonable. And it's consistent with the oath of office that all of us have taken.
Yeah. And I think that Donald Trump made it clear what his focus is in that post. He used or alluded to or just made his disgusting transphobic attacks. I think about 4 times he was attacking trans people in the course of I guess it was it felt like a 1,000-word post. But that seems to be what Donald Trump wants to focus on right now. He thinks transphobia is his key to victory. There's been a conversation within the Democratic Party and our messaging apparatus if these issues is something that we should talk about less. Me personally, I think that it would be insane for us to say we are not going to care for or stand up for trans Americans. We're going to capitulate to this administration. This is a moment right now in which you're saying we need to bring the fight to Donald Trump. Do you think that Democrats need to stop talking about, oh, maybe we should move on from this, maybe we shouldn't be defending trans people, or how do you think that we need to be having this conversation?
Yeah, our position is that we will always defend all Americans. But Donald Trump is trying to distract the American people. There's nothing about transgender Americans that has anything to do with this fight related to keeping the government open. Mm-hmm. So he's lying to the American people. Tens of millions of Americans are about to experience dramatic increases in their healthcare costs if we don't renew the tax credits connected to the Affordable Care Act. Hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health clinics in every community are at risk of shutting down, and many are. Certainly that is the case in rural America. And of course, we know that the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, which was part of Donald Trump's one big ugly bill, affects everyone. Urban America, rural America, small town America, ex-urban America, and the heartland of America. And so it was an unhinged rant. Donald Trump is trying to distract the American people by raising issues that he knows has nothing to do with this fight. Nothing to do with this fight. And we're going to continue to stay the course. Our message to the American people as to what we're fighting for is simple. Cancel the cuts, lower the cost, save your health care.
And I think that's the message that we need to be delivering. We need to be closing on. And before we do, because I know you're busy and you got to get back to pissing off Donald Trump, but Mike Johnson this morning alluded to the fact that, maybe he'd want to attend that meeting before Donald Trump canceled it. It doesn't really seem like he's on top of things. Have you heard from your colleagues, maybe even on the right? Mike Johnson clearly has ceded most of his power to Trump, but is this a speaker who knows what he's doing, or is he just Donald Trump's pet at this point?
Well, I think as we've consistently seen, both in the House and in the Senate, rank and file Republicans and Republican leadership, all they do is serve as a rubber stamp for Donald Trump's extreme agenda. Donald Trump says jump, and they say, boss, how high? That's what they do. The House is not functioning under Republican control as a separate and co-equal branch of government. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of Donald Trump and his administration, which is why they continue to do such great damage to the American people. And to tell you the truth, whether Mike Johnson or John Thune showed up at the Oval Office, it wouldn't matter, because we know there's only one voice in this situation who's going to make all the calls and all the decisions, and that's Donald Trump, which is why Leader Schumer and I wrote to Donald Trump on Saturday and demanded a meeting, which he agreed to, and then has backed out of because they're running scared.
Well, we know that our pushback has worked recently. A boycott of ABC has Jimmy Kimmel back on the air, Donald Trump losing in court constantly. Let's make this another example of how we can actually use our power. Thank you for leading that fight, Leader Jeffries. I always appreciate the time.
Man,